welcome you all after the tea break. And we're now going to begin our first technical session. Now I invite Mr. Gino Herman to give the perspective of European Patent Office in regard to computer-related inventions and their patentability. So I welcome you, Mr. Gino, to enlighten the audience.
Thank you. Okay, good morning once more. Before I start with the topic itself, I want to give you a little bit more background information on the EPO very shortly. As mentioned previously, we are an intergovernmental organization covering 38 states with extension states and validation states. So extension states are member of the European Union that might later become members. Validation states are outside, like as you can see, Morocco, Moldavia, Tunisia. But if you get a patent in the EP, you can automatically, if you pay the necessary fees, get a patent in those countries. As mentioned previously, one of our points is that we are 7,000 employees with 4,300 examiners, all working in specialized areas. And we will, in the future, be responsible for the unitary patent if and when that comes. And quality, as I mentioned previously as well, is one of our key elements. We are the only patent office which is ISO 9001 certified, fully certified. We are, just to give you an idea on the filings and why we are here, as you see, medical technology is more than 12,000 applications a year, last in 2015. Next places are digital communication, telecom. You see ICT is there at the very top of all these aspects. And you see also at the side the change is going up, up and up. And of course you have also influence on other ones. If you see transport, cars, it's full of computers and microprocessors as well, of course. These are the top applicants that you have an ID. So as you can see worldwide, number one is Philips, is European. Then we have 2 Koreans, then we come to China, Europe again, the US again, etc. You don't see any Japanese, but they are the biggest part of the numbers between 10 and 20. We have lots of Japanese applicants that are situated there. We have made a tremendous step up in the last years in production productivity. We expect by the end of the year to have about 90,000 grants. And in the second phase, I will explain you why that comes in the last session this afternoon. As you can see, a big increase in production, done partially because we have more examiners now than previously, partially as well because we have now a performance-related incentive. So your career only progresses if you're working hard enough according to the standards. As mentioned, ISO 9000, we're the only one, and we systematically get good feedback from applicants and from IIM surveys. Why do we have good quality? We are also the only patent office that works with examining divisions of 3 examiners, so the final decision on grant and refusal is taken by 3 and not by a single one. They are working, as mentioned, in very specialized areas. For example, in my directorate, I have 35 examiners only working on G06F1, G06F3, so mainly on these type of devices. We do not outsource anything. USPTO is outsourcing their PCT searches. We do them all ourselves. And what we hear as well from our applicants is that we are quite predictable. You know what you get if you get an application. If you're fully in line with our law, then you can get a patent. CPC is the new classification scheme that entered into force now a couple of years ago. It's a cooperation, started off as a cooperation between the EPO and the USPTO. USPTO now is only publishing with CPC classes, be aware of that. Even if they call it their internal class, it's CPC now. So you cannot use for recent documents the old classes anymore of the US classification. Since we started it off with the 2 of us, 24 other offices have joined. As you can see, not the smallest. China is there, Korea is there, and we're still talking to Japan. Japan is still using their rough terms, but we are in discussion to see how we can come to some common approach there. Our source of search is 90 million documents, and that's all available to you under Espasnet, but Mrs. Dipti will have some more words about that later onwards. We also have all Asian documentation at our disposal with translation engine, so it's not because we do not speak Chinese, Japanese or Korean that we don't cover them. As you can see, 27% of the documents cited have an Asian background, so we do cover Asia as well. And what was mentioned previously by Mr. Power, we are talking with the 4 other patent offices. We trying to harmonize, but harmonizing law is a very long and difficult story. But we're busy with that since many years now already, and we hope we can progress. You have seen some of those results already. US has changed from a first to file, from a first to invent to a first to file system. This is one of the consequences of trying to align our different patent laws in the different countries. Early certainty, I will touch that in the next part, but we're really speeding up things. We want to give faster patents. It's one of the criticisms we always heard as EPO. You're good, but you're slow. We're tackling that now. We are PCT, International Search Authority. We are #1. We cover about nearly 40% of all PCT searches in the world are done by us, by the same staff, the 4,300 examiners, the experienced people that are doing these searches, and have also the other ones at their disposal. We are also, of course, an examination, preliminary examination authority. Of course, we only examine if we did the search. We'd only do it chapter 2 if we've done the chapter 1, that's clear. But what you get with us in the chapter 2 stage is that we also, as only patent office, we do a top-up search for you. So we will check if there are some new documents that entered the game between the different dates. That's also part of our services. And we have PCT Direct, I'll explain that a little bit later. And we're now joining WIPO as well for the e-dossier, the ePCT. That was very quickly. Hopla. Escape. Yep. Sorry if I turn around once in a while, but my screen is black for some reason and I can't get it going. So that's why you see me sometimes twisting around. Okay, now the real bread and butter, that what we're here for. We call it Computer Implemented Inventions in Europe. First of all, compared with other patent offices, we do not have separate CII guidelines. However, we have each year new guidelines that are published, and the next ones are to be published in November 2016, so next November. And if all goes well, we will create a web page, a CII guidelines on web, not with text, but each time with links to the new guidelines, to the sections that are of importance for CII. So we hope that that helps a little bit the people finding the necessary information. Okay, I'll shortly talk about what it is. What is a CII? What are the legal provisions? What is an invention? What is etc.? How can we interpret it? And the approach that we're doing. We call it the two-hurdle approach, where first you would check eligibility, and afterwards inventive step. This is the way we handle these things. And I'll finish off with some typical claim formats that we accept. Okay, what's a CII? What's a computer implemented invention? Well, it's simply an invention which uses something of a computer. It can be the web, it can be this can be a standard computer, it can be microprocessors. It's defined as being the fact that the feature of the inventions are realized wholly or partly by means of a computer program. That's the definition that we handle. Can you patent them in Europe? Well, yes, you can. But they have to fulfill the requirements of the EPC. And these are the ones that I'm going to guide you through now. So the European Patent Convention, that's the Bible for the examiners, and that should be the Bible for the attorneys as well. This is what you have to comply with. And the most important articles that we are going to touch today is Article 52 of the EPC, and that says that European patents shall be granted for any inventions, that word is important, in all fields of technology, provided that they are new, inventive, and are susceptible to industrial application. Mainly the last step for our type of applications is irrelevant, because these are really very specific type of applications that might fall out there. So you will not hear me about that. New novelty is the same standard in all patent offices. Inventive step, as I will explain, we have a very specific way of handling that. Article 52(2) goes back to the word invention, which you saw in Article 52(1). It says that the following in particular shall not be considered, not be regarded as inventions. And there you see the list of discoveries, scientific theories, mathematical methods, aesthetic creations, schemes, rules and methods for performing mental acts, playing games, doing business, programs for computers, presentations of information. A list which is very similar with the Indian law, as Dr. Garg will probably tell you later onwards. We have an exclusion, or a more refinement. It's not all of those that are excluded. It's only to the extent that the European patent application relates to such subject matter or activities as such. So as such limits really the exclusions at the top. It must only be that. And one of the points now is trying to explain to you what that means. Okay, in fact, Article 52(2) is not an exhaustive list. When it was drafted, in this case for us, it was drafted in 1973. The drafters had no idea where technology would be leading. Today, nearly everybody of us has these type of things. They couldn't imagine that that existed in 1973. So, in fact, the spirit of the whole article is that these inventions all contain or do not contain a technical character. And you will hear that word technical a lot this morning from me, because that's the crux of it all in Europe. An invention can be patented if it has technical character and solves a technical problem. That aspect is also in other rules in our patent law. I'm just giving this as an example. You can look at that up yourself. But we're coming there again and again. Technical is there, and a patent must be technical, must solve something technical. Now, what is technical? Good question. The German patent law has a definition for that. In the EPO, we have never given a definition. Neither did our boards of appeal. They refuse. The boards of appeal, they give decisions. There is a difference between the law system that we have in the office, in the EPO. The decisions are case limited, so it's only for that case that they apply, and it's not that automatically in further cases decided by boards of appeal must follow those. We also have an enlarged board of appeal that is asked legal questions if, for example, there are two conflicting decisions of lower boards. You can have an enlarged board that then will decide, and those are binding. And if you see those binding decisions, we will then translate them into our new guidelines. They will be entered into the guidelines. Also, when you look at decisions, you will see some other decisions repeated time and time again, and they become more or less standard law then. And these also are then entered into the guidelines, and we will then apply them. But remember, boards of appeal decisions, there are lots of them. They are only for that particular case and are not binding. So, what is our two-hurdle approach? First of all, we will see if at all an application fulfills the requirements of 52 and 3, being, is it one of those exclusions per se? In US type explanation, they always talk about eligibility, and that's what it is. Is it eligible to be an invention? Then we are going to go to the second hurdle. Is the claim novel? which is a basic test. Is it exactly the same? Or is it the next one then is, does it contain an inventive step? I'm not going to go into novelty because that's the same in all patent laws. It's simply, can you find these features back in my prior art, my single prior art document? Now, how do we tackle inventive step? No, first of all, a little bit more explanation of the exclusion side. We consider if the subject matter is fully technical, the subject matter is of course not excluded from patentability. That speaks for itself. If it's fully non-technical, it's excluded, and then it's excluded on patentability on Article 52.2 and 1 and 3. Sorry. The moment the subject matter has something technical at all, at least one single feature, at that moment we say that the subject matter has technical character, and automatically we jump to inventive step. So different from some other legal systems where you will get refusals on patentability for something which is partially technical, this will never happen in the EPO. The moment there is something technical in there, you pass the first hurdle and you jump to inventive step. An example. We have here a security policy for controlling a subject access to an object, comprising defining a clearance level of the subject, defining a security level for the object, determining whether to grant access to the object based on the object's security level and the subject's clearance level. Okay, well, very nice. Now let's see. Is there any technical thing in there at all? Well, not really. So this is really excluded. No technical aspects at all. So this is excluded. Because, for example, this can be a company policy allowing workers access to a certain area. You know, you need to have a certain level of authorization before you can enter a certain room or before you can access a certain computer. But this is purely non-technical. So this asset would be excluded on 52.2 and 3. We take the same example now, but we have added some words. You can see at the top a computer implemented method. And you can see throughout as well is access to a computer resource in a network. We have again the aspect of computer resources in the last line, in the third line. So we simply have added some technicality to it. In fact, it comes down to a normal security policy which we had, but now applied to the internet at large, whatever. It can be just accessing your computer over a network, allowed or not allowed. Maybe with the PIN code whatsoever. But in this case, we do have technical aspects in there. The non-technical aspect is still the same broad security thing that we had previously, but now we have applied it into a network, and therefore it has at least one technical feature and it has technical character. So it does pass the first test, it is eligible. I'm not saying it's inventive, but it's at least eligible. Okay, problem solution approach. This is an approach which has been devised by our boards of appeal since the beginning of the office. So from the law was written in 73, we started in 77. So this dates already from the end of the 70s. And they have tried to find a way, an approach to objectivize something which is subjective. Because inventive step, also known as obviousness, it's very difficult to decide on it in a neutral way. So therefore, they have devised this aspect. The first point is you will establish the closest prior art. This is part of your search. You search what is closest, what has the most features in common, which covers the same aspect. Once you have that, you are going to look at the differences. So what is in my invention, which is not in the prior art? That can be one difference.
You are audible.
Am I audible? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Then, so we're going to look at the differences. It can be one, it can be multiple ones. If it are multiple ones, you are going to look if they have a certain synergy. They can be completely different. You know, my keyboard has buttons and my screen has a touch screen. No synergetic effect, can be two differences, you treat them separately. For each one of those differences, you are going to see what is the technical effect of that aspect. What is caused by that difference. And based on that technical effect, you will come to an objective technical problem. Based on the effect. Now let's take an example. You have an X-ray machine that when it works, its X-ray, the source is giving X-rays continuously. That's prior art. Now you have an invention that has an X-ray machine where they will pulse the source instead of having it continuously. So the difference is pulsing it. That's the technical difference. The effect is not how can I change my previously known X-ray machine so that it's pulsed. No. We have to look what is happening with that pulsing. By pulsing the X-ray machines, I'm here again. By pulsing the X-ray machine, you use less power, or maybe the life cycle becomes longer because you use less of the source. It's something which is costly. So if you pulse it, you prolong the life cycle. So the problem that you're solving by the technical effect is extending the life cycle of my X-ray machine. Got that? That's the type of reasoning that we are using all the time. And once you have that technical problem, you will have a look if that solution is obvious to the skilled person. Mainly you will look around in other prior art if that has been solved in a similar way. If this is known, for example, in stroboscopes or in lightnings, you might say it's not inventive. If it's not the case, because it might even shorten the life for light bulbs, whatever. But you are going to see what is, if this has been solved in a similar way. And that is the approach that we have. As mentioned, the problem must be technical. There you have the famous word again. And you should not point. As I explained, you should not say the solution is pulsing the X-ray. You shouldn't point to the result. The only cases where you might see that is when you have non-technical contributions. If you have, for example, a business method, like we had previously, applied on a normal standard network, you can say, what I'm trying to solve is to implement this business method on a network or on a computer. That is allowed because the business method is non-technical. This is what is called the config approach. It's one of the basic decisions that you will find in our guidelines. So that's the way you handle it. So if we go back to our network system, security policy on the network, it has technical character. It also has non-technical aspects, still the security policy. You can say there is a requirement specification, like in technology. The requirements to be made are the security policy. The only difference is the security policy. So the problem is implementing the security policy on the network. This is straightforward for any, a programmer, any simple, quote, quote, programmer can do that. You don't need an inventive person. You don't need somebody with technical skills to overcome a technical problem. Let's go back to the same example again now. And we have now added, without specifying them, but in the last step, all of a sudden we get some details of the technical implementation. For example, it is using a certain security code with VPN connections and whatsoever, which is doing something specific on that network. So that's a real technical difference. So if we go over the whole procedure again, we have still some non-technical aspects, but the differences are now really the details of the technical implementation. These technical things on, it can be the standards, can be on anything. The objective technical problem is still how to implement the security policy, because that's still one of the differences as well. Is it inventive? If that technical aspect is inventive and novel, yes, it will be patented. So you can see we do patent applications which are software related, but they still should solve a technical problem. But that technical problem can be in communication policies, it can be in pure software, it can be in operating systems. For example, improving the timeliness of an operating system, using less memory, are all technical problems which would be acceptable in the EPO in order to get a patent. So what we're looking at is, in the area of technical character, is there a part not covered by the closest prior art? Types of claims, a very last word before I give the floor to Dr. Gerg. This will be part of the new guidelines to be published soon. So we accept a method claim, a single method claim. This is different with the US style, where you can have multiple independent claims of the same category. You can have one method claim, you can have one device claim, apparatus system, whatever. But we also allow computer program or computer program product claims on condition that they refer to the method claim or contain the same steps as the method claim. So if the method claim is acceptable, then only you will have a computer program product claim acceptable, and also a fourth type, computer readable storage mediums, data carriers containing a program. But again, it must refer to the method steps. This is just another table, again explaining how the flow goes. So if it has no technical character, it will be excluded on patentability issues. If it's technical, you will look at the differences. If there are no differences, it's not novel, Article 54. If the difference exists and it's not technical, you will refuse an inventive step because it doesn't solve a technical problem. If the difference is technical, you are going to see, is it known or not known? Is it obvious towards the previous, for the skilled person? I say in another technical area, in lots of cases, if it's really an obvious step for a skilled person, we even will not going to cover that by a document. If it's really an obvious thing, a skilled person should know, we will say a skilled person knows that. However, if you are at the other side as applicant or as attorney, and you say, I don't agree with that, we have to prove it to you that we think it's obvious. So it's part of the game between examiners and the other side. If we say it's obvious and you don't agree with us, tell us why you don't agree with us, etc. But if you have proceedings in the EPO, of course you have to go through a European attorney in those cases, but try and make your reasonings according to this problem solution approach, because we do it all the time, and it's the only way you can convince us that it's novel and novel not, but inventive. If you don't use that, you won't be able to do that. Okay, I think we'll pass the floor now. We need
invite Dr. A.K. Garg to give the Indian perspective of patentability issues related to computer-related inventions. And we will have the question answers after this presentation. So my question answers you can ask. Both of them will be invited.